Happy Easter! I'm not really big on celebrating Easter, but today is April the 4th, which is a date that is always significant to me because it would have been my brother's birthday. And this year he would have been 51 years old, which is crazy. It's crazy to think my older brother, who will always to me be, the young guy with the Bon Jovi dreadlocks, would have been 51 years old. I was a little introspective and sad on this particular day, and I go back to a poem that my brother sent me in one of the last emails he ever sent me. And I regret that I didn't spend more time sort of reading it and appreciating it while my brother was still alive, because I can absolutely now understand why it resonated so deeply with him. And so every year I like to come back and I like to read the poem. And I like to do it every year because as David Zaritsky said in the last Bond book club we did, when you read something at one point and then you read it again, you're a different person and you read it differently. So I think every year that I read this poem, I get something else out of it. And this year I decided to jump in and do some research about this poem to try and figure out why it meant so much to my brother and why it makes me feel a connection to him even though he's gone. So the poem is called The City, and it's written by an Alexandrian Greek poet called Constantine Cavafy. I think I pronounced that last name right. It's not Cavafy, like that stupid word that Donald Trump once tweeted out. Constantine Cavafy, I didn't really know anything about him, so I did some research, and there is this wonderful article written in 2005 by Andre Asserman, who is the New York Times bestselling author of Call Me By Your Name, which is a story of young love that recently I think got made into a wonderful film with Armie Hammer. Anyway, Andre Asserman wrote this incredible article about this poem in particular, and started at the beginning. Who the hell was Constantine Cavafy? Constantine Cavafy, writes Andre Asserman, 1863 to 1933, was the Alexandrian Greek poet whose poetry dazzled E.M. Forster and cast a haunting, luminous glow over Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet, left some of us the most outspoken homoerotic poems. I'd never picked up on homoeroticism, but I'm not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. They bristle with desire, with the anguish of desire, and desire recollected in tranquility. Yet for all their candour, many of these poems are shot through with something far more poignant than desire: regret. Regret for lost love, for loves that could have once been and should have lasted a trifle longer than the one-night stands they were fated to remain. I think with that description, Andre Asserman nails this poem in particular, because the reason this poem is so poignant to me is because it is just a regretful piece. And in some ways that's what breaks my heart about it. It was my brother sending that to me was basically him explaining that, his heart was breaking. It's funny, I think maybe in our family, we're not very good at communicating things with words, but we're very good at communicating things with book recommendations and poems and things. So I can understand why the poem would resonate with my brother, particularly because of that aspect of regret in the city. My brother lived in some amazing cities. He lived in Krakow in Poland. He spent 5 years in Budapest. He was down and out, literally, in London and Paris. I remember seeing him in Paris. And then he was in Oxford. He loved cities, and cities, mean an awful lot. One of the last interactions I have had with my brother, for his birthday, I walked off from one of the offices I was working in Midtown to Grand Central Station to take pictures and send them to him, because he'd always wanted to see it, and I'm sad that he never got to. But I think what made this poem especially significant to my brother was the fact that the quintessential English translation of it was done by Lawrence Durrell. Lawrence Durrell is a very famous, celebrated English writer. He's the older brother of Gerald Durrell. I don't know, maybe I'm old, but when I was a kid, I got introduced to Gerald Durrell. There was his book, My Family and Other Animals, and there was this wonderful TV show they made about his childhood growing up in Corfu in Greece. And for me, it was always significant because my family, we used to go to Corfu on holiday when I was a child. And one year we stayed in the White House, which was the house that the Durrells lived in. And so I loved those books. I loved the TV show they made of My Family and Other Animals. And then for me, it was especially significant because I lived in the same house. I saw the same sights. The smell of roast pork to this day, barbecued pork, still just takes me back to being a kid in Corfu for that wonderful summer. And Lawrence Durrell was Gerald's older brother. And I think, I resonated with Gerald Durrell, who was the younger, more boyish, childish person, and then Lawrence Durrell was this deep, brooding, clever man who I think connected with my brother, and he wrote a version of his childhood, well, not his childhood, his period in Corfu that's so interesting to see, the two different experiences told in two completely different, contradictory ways. Lawrence Durrell, he escaped to Corfu to escape the stultifying English culture, which he described as the English death. And that resonates with me a lot because, I'm an Englishman in New York, well, New Jersey, because I couldn't live in England. I couldn't. I hated it. I love being English. But I'm more English when I'm not in England than I could ever have been living there. And I think my brother felt the same way. I think that's why he escaped to Hungary and Poland and Paris and all these other places. And I think that's why he connected with Lawrence Durrell so well. But Lawrence Durrell's translation of this poem goes deeper than just taking a poem in Greek and converting it into English. And again, this article by Andre Assman, I think, explained what it was about it, so beautifully. It was so crazy finding this article. It's like, who would have thought that somebody would sit down and research, the original Greek poem and then other English language translations and dissecting them and checking the interpretations of them and which is most accurate. And then he puts the Lawrence Durrell on the quintessential English translation of this poem. And this is what he writes about it. And I think this is what I love about it. Okay. Andre Assman writes, this is by far the least faithful rendition of the poem, that's Lawrence Durrell's translation, and one no one should even attempt to pass off as Cavafy's. But it does capture something of Cavafy's spirit, which the others do not. There is, in the end, something at once dry and maudlin in each translation I've consulted, as though none of the translators can quite find the right pitch or calibrate the right tone. Durrell, on the other hand, conveys in a cadence that is uniquely English the rich tonalities of sorrow and regret as they have existed in the language of Shakespeare, Browning, and Yeats. And this, perhaps, is the secret of translation. To capture in the target version, English, not just the spirit and the letter of the source version, Greek, but to do so in an idiom that the English reader would instantly recognize as bearing all the luster of an immortal poem. That's why Mr. Assman is a best-selling author, because he manages to put that far more eloquently than I ever could. There's something about this translation that just captures what it is that I think Cavafy was trying to say in the original Greek, and it allows somebody like me, who knows precisely one word in Greek, yasso, to actually be able to appreciate what this incredible writer was trying to convey. Anyway, I've gone on for 8 minutes about this poem that probably won't even take me 8 minutes to read, but I'm going to read it now. And my brother, bless his heart, always liked a drink, and most of my adult memories of him were in a bar in Paris or Budapest or wherever. So I'm going to have a bottle of Corona Familiar, which my main character in my story is reading at the moment. So I always like to drink what they drink, and you always have to have a little bit of ritual with any alcoholic drink. So I put in a piece of fresh cut lime, which I'm spurting over there. There we go. Happy birthday, Rupert. The lime makes it. A City by Constantine Cavafy, translated by Lawrence Durrell. You tell yourself, I'll be gone, to some other land, some other sea, to a city lovelier far than this could ever have been or hope to be, where every step now tightens the noose, a heart in a body buried and out of use. How long? How long must I be here, confined among these dreary purlieus of the common mind? Wherever now I look, black ruins of my life rise into view. So many years have I been here, spending and squandering, and nothing gained. There's no new land, my friend, no new sea, for the city will follow you. In the same streets you'll wander endlessly. The same mental suburbs slip from youth to age. In the same house go white at last. The city is a cage. No other places, always this, your earthly landfall, and no ship exists to take you from yourself. Ah, don't you see? Just as you've ruined your life in this one plot of ground, you've ruined its worth everywhere now, over the whole earth. Yeah, it's not a cheery poem, but I can see what it means, and it's very, very sad to me because I feel that my brother must have felt a lot of regret before he died about his life. But in many, many ways, he shouldn't do. Regret is a useless thing. Our lives are stories, and the whole point of a story is conflict and challenge and struggle. And some stories have happy endings and some stories have sad endings, and they're both equally valid. And I look back at my brother's life, and I was only really privy to a part of it, but I have some incredible memories of him. Dressing up as highwayman as a kid and riding my Shetland pony around, driving in the fields in my sister's Renault 5 with him because he never passed his driving test, going to Budapest and drinking huge flagons of Amstel and talking nonsense with some big Hungarian guy. Neither of us understood each other, but we managed to have a conversation. There was one night we went to this old abandoned Soviet airbase, and we sat with all his friends eating bacon on sticks over fire. And Hungarian bacon is not like bacon that we have in America, which is the best bacon at all of the entire world, or like British bacon, which is okay bacon. No, it was like Hungarian big chunks of pork fat that would drip, and then you'd eat them, and it was like, but they would be singing these Soviet songs, and it was amazing. That was an amazing experience, going to Slovakia for a day. And then when I met him in Paris, I was a tour guide then, and I had to abandon the group that I was looking after to go and help him out and then come back. And it was it was still amazing. He took me to the Shakespeare bookshop on the left bank, where for a little while he lived and worked there. And we drank cheap red wine on the banks of the Seine. Yeah, last time I ever saw him, we went for a martini in Oxford, and I don't know, back then it was very difficult to get a decent martini. It's like you can get them anywhere in America. You can go to a cheap roadside diner and get the most beautifully made martini cocktail, whereas in England, if you ask for a martini, they'll pour some martini Cinzano into a glass and throw an ice cube in it. Anyway, yeah, so my brother might not have lived the happiest life, but he lived a very colourful life. He was somebody who lived. And I don't know, it just makes me think, reading this poem every year, that it makes me feel a connection to him and a sadness about how he must have felt, because he was sad and full of regret, and yet he had given so many people so many nice, wonderful, happy, meaningful memories. And they weren't all good, they weren't all bad, but they were all real and authentic, and he contributed to so many people's lives, and one can only hope that our own lives can reach people the same way. Anyway, I've rabbited for a while. Thank you very much. Happy birthday, Rupert. Happy Easter, everyone. And until some other time.